We start with a report by the American Bar Association. It found that Oregon was almost 1,300 defense attorneys short of where it needed to be, and that was back in 2022. The state's 592 public defense lawyers would need to work an impossible more than 26-hour workday to do their cases justice, per the report. But right before he took office in January, District Attorney Nathan Vasquez did an interview with Oregon Public Broadcasting and said he does not think there's a public defender crisis in Oregon. Instead, he called it a defense attorney work stoppage, resulting in criminal defendants going unrepresented. And as we've seen time and time again, when defendants don't have a lawyer, their cases can be delayed or simply dismissed. I watched it firsthand once possession of hard drugs became a crime again. So when the DA came on KGW's Straight Talk last month, we asked him to expand on his comments to OPB, and he said the issue is public defenders refusing to take cases.
But unfortunately, what's happening here in Multnomah County is that we are just seeing thousands of cases that aren't being, appointed an attorney. And even the judge can't step in and say, well, you're going to take that case. They're just simply refusing to do it, and it ends there. And what my biggest concern is this: there's a lack of accountability and a lack of transparency in this area. We have repeatedly asked for the numbers, and by that I mean, okay, you have 10 defense attorneys, give us all the numbers of the cases they have so that we can see that are you taking the appropriate amount, because there's a limit that they're supposed to be taking, and what we know so far is that here in Multnomah County that's not being met.
Vasquez took aim at nonprofit public defenders in particular. So we spoke with Carl McPherson, the executive director of Metropolitan Public Defender. His nonprofit firm is the biggest provider of public defense attorneys in both Multnomah and Washington counties. And as you might guess, he's not thrilled with what Vasquez said.
The comment reveals someone who's just uninformed. It's an offensive and inaccurate comment. Our nonprofits, MPD, are people which consist of office assistants, legal assistants, case managers, investigators, and attorneys, and other administrative support staff, work incredibly hard every single day for our clients, and we will continue to do so. So the political rhetoric that he's using just fuels us.
Now, we've reported on the public defense crisis in Oregon for a while now, and most of what we've heard is that it comes from a shortage of public defenders. But Vasquez contends the current defenders are just refusing to take on a full workload. But who decides what a full workload is for a public defender? Oregon uses something called the MAC, the maximum attorney caseload. It's an upper boundary that the state has set on the number of cases public defenders should take. McPherson, the nonprofit attorney, says the MAC was never meant to be a target for public defenders. It's a ceiling, he says, not a floor. The Oregon Public Defense Commission tracks data on how many cases public defenders take and how close to the MAC they are. You can see here, Metropolitan Public Defenders, McPherson's firm, hit almost 93% over the last 17 months. Another nonprofit, Multnomah County Defenders, had just over 77%. The highest rate in the county was the Portland Defense Consortium, which hit almost 103%, meaning they took more cases beyond the MAC threshold. Now, Vasquez said he likes consortia, which are groups of law firms and attorneys who often do their work on their own, private law work, and team up to take public defense cases. But looking through the data from around the state, the nonprofits in Multnomah County are not exactly outliers. MAC utilization rates, that's what these percentages you see right here are called, range from just over 8% at a small private law firm in the Gorge to 161% at another private firm in Polk County. But the big firms who handle a lot of clients tend to be in the 70 to 90% range. Consortia, like the one in Multnomah County, do often hit higher rates than the nonprofits. But McPherson says there are reasons for that. First, they have less state oversight to deal with. They also have more attorneys with the experience to take fewer, bigger cases.
So the consortia in Multnomah County handles overwhelmingly majority felony cases. They're not handling a large percentage of the misdemeanor cases. The nonprofits are. The nonprofits are handling a significant percentage of misdemeanor cases and the low felony cases. You can't reach 100% of your MAC on misdemeanors and low felonies, given the way the system operates in Multnomah County. It's not possible. You will burn out every single one of those attorneys.
So, is there a public defender work stoppage? That term implies they are not taking cases as a form of protest. And apart from the MAC rates, Vasquez has not really provided any evidence to support that claim, though he wants to see the amount and type of cases that each public defender has taken. But as we get into the weeds of this issue, the big picture is that the state is seeing more unrepresented criminal defendants than ever before. A February 3rd report from the Oregon Judicial Department found that unrepresented cases are at an all-time high, rising 11% in the last month. There are 4,100 defendants without an attorney, totaling almost 4,600 cases. And that helps explain the frustration from someone like Vasquez. Now, he campaigned on being a more aggressive prosecutor than his progressive predecessor, Mike Schmidt. He's bringing more cases before judges, only to see them put on the back burner because he says there are no public defenders stepping forward to take them. And everyone agrees that these defendants need representation. But public defenders like Carl McPherson say they're taking as many cases as they can while still meeting their ethical obligations.
So when you're looking at MAC and you're looking at how many cases someone's taking, you have to account for the ethical rules. You also have to take into account of how many of your clients are in custody, how much discovery is involved in those cases, how many of those cases are planning to go to trial. As just some factors that have to be considered. And so, that's why the contracts themselves say MAC isn't the end all be all. It is a metric. You can't exceed it, but you have to balance MAC versus against your ethics. You always have to follow your ethics first.
The MAC sets a limit of 300 misdemeanors for an attorney in a year. But to a lot of experts, that's an outdated standard and still puts attorneys in danger of breaching their ethical obligations. A 2023 national study by the Rand Corporation recommended case limits that are about half of the Oregon MAC. The Rand numbers are under the orange bar there. The MAC numbers are under the purple. An American Bar Association report from 2022 wanted even lower limits under the green section. And if we look all the way to the right, the Washington State Bar began transitioning this year to a standard that falls somewhere in the middle. The state of Oregon is trying to put together a more stable model of public defense, hiring some attorneys as state employees or handing out hourly contracts directly with the state. That's thanks to a 2023 bill that Governor Tina Kotek signed into law. But that's incentivized attorneys who were already working at nonprofits to jump ship for the state gigs, where they're now being offered better pay, better benefits, and a lower caseload. Because, get this, Oregon is not using the MAC as its standard for state employees.
They are adhering to the RAND numbers, which are, depending on the type of case, about half of what the Oregon MAC are. So yes, people are leaving for those three reasons. Right. Financial reasons, benefits, and lower caseloads.
McPherson's firm shared this data here on attorney starting and maximum salaries. Stay with me. MPD is his nonprofit. OPDC are the attorneys now working for the state. And the prosecutors in Multnomah and Washington counties, as you can see, make more than both. Oregon's public defense firms have also been ravaged by turnover. A 2024 survey by the Oregon Criminal Defense Lawyers Association found an attrition rate of nearly 25%, meaning in the previous 15 months, a quarter of public defenders left their jobs, and over half of those people left public defense entirely. So between attorney burnout and poaching by the state, nonprofits are seeing substantial brain drain, and recruitment doesn't make up for losing experienced attorneys.
You replaced those individuals, and it wasn't a one-for-one. It's not like someone leaves and you replace them the next day. It usually takes months to replace, which people don't talk about either. So you lose a felony qualified attorney. It's not like there's somebody right there saying, oh, I want to come be a public defender right now. So you're now recruiting and doing the best to get someone in. Who you're bringing in to replace those felony qualified attorneys, overwhelming majority of the time are misdemeanor brand new attorneys.
Okay, so we've got fewer and less qualified attorneys doing the work. But McPherson says it's not just a staffing problem, it's a system problem. A grand jury report on Multnomah County's jail system late last year even found that the shortage of corrections officers and sorry condition of the jails created roadblocks for defense attorneys contacting their clients, writing, quote, "Defense attorneys have an ethical obligation to review all discovery with their clients. If they are unable to meet with their clients due to restricted or canceled visitor hours or phone hours, the defendants may have further delays in the resolution of their cases. The longer defense attorneys represent a particular client, the fewer additional clients they can take, which leads to fewer available attorneys to appoint to new indigent defendants." The report mentioned discovery, which is the legal term for sharing evidence and information related to a case. McPherson said that's become another hurdle for public defenders. More and more cases involve things like body cam video and all the data pulled from cell phones, which means defense attorneys need to review all of it and go over it with their clients, which takes time.
I don't think people understand that and understand how much more significant the amount of evidence is. I've been doing this for 27 years. I remember 27 years ago when you pretty much had a 3-page police report in most of your cases. That's nowhere near what's happening now. It's not even close.
So finally, let's look at what the state of Oregon is doing about all of this. If you can believe it, things are not exactly going to plan. Ironically, what Oregon wants to do is phase out the use of consortia, the other private law firms, the ones who are taking more cases than the MAC threshold that we told you about earlier. This is from the Oregon Public Defense Commission's 6-year plan. That's right, 6-year plan. They're moving toward a model with more full-time public defenders working at both OPDC and nonprofit public defender offices. The remaining public defense services will be provided by a panel of attorneys who work at an hourly rate. But as we've already discussed, Oregon is cannibalizing nonprofits for their state jobs. And it's the for-profit law firms who, so far, seem to be doing all right. And based on Governor Kotek's recommended budget, that's not changing in the next 2 years. She wants to add 40 more attorneys to the state trial division and keep paying the higher hourly contracts for attorneys through the end of this year. What she's not suggesting are any big investments in the nonprofit contractors. Obviously disappointing for someone like McPherson, who sees the nonprofits as a vital part of the public defense ecosystem in Oregon.
Oregon needs to help cultivate the nonprofits and make certain that they are thriving. And when we have a disparate system based on pay and caseloads, that's counter to that. There also needs to be some improvement in the criminal legal system. I mean, when we talk about the unrepresented crisis in Oregon, it is absolutely a crisis. When people talk about a public defense crisis, there is a crisis, but this is an entire system crisis. This is a failure of the criminal legal system, not solely at the hands of public defense.
All right, joining us live now is Multnomah County District Attorney Nathan Vasquez. Mr. Vasquez, thanks for joining us.
Hello, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Okay, so first, you've been listening to our segment here. The executive director of Metropolitan Public Defender says your stance on this issue reveals that you are, quote, uninformed, and that it's just political rhetoric that is inaccurate. So what do you make of that?
Well, what I make is that they've had over 3 years to work on this issue, and it's only gotten worse. And yes, he wants to point the finger everywhere else, but look at his own actions and how they have the things they've done to address this crisis.
All right, so you campaigned on being a more aggressive prosecutor. So you say you're bringing in more cases only to see them be put on the back burner because you say no public defenders are stepping in to take them. What are some examples of where this has happened?
Well, I want to be very clear. When the public defenders are taking the cases, they're working very hard on them. This is a management issue, and where we're seeing it is certainly in the felony property crimes, drug cases. These are all the issues that are really affecting our community, and a lot of cases that involve victims that, quite frankly, they're not taking the cases and the victims aren't getting justice.
Okay, so what in your view needs to be done in the short term here to deal with this issue?
Well, this is a situation where I believe, the viewers at home and the state legislatures out there, they need to demand more.
They need to ask the governor to step up, to make changes in OPDC, the governing body over this, because quite frankly, they've had millions, hundreds of millions of dollars pumped into this system, and we just haven't seen any changes. In fact, the only change we've seen is it's gotten worse. The individuals, like you heard from just a few moments ago, they continue to point the finger elsewhere, as opposed to actually coming up with some real changes that can help our community and the state, across the state.
So during that clip from Straight Talk that we showed, you mentioned a lack of transparency, saying that you've asked for the numbers of cases that public defenders have to try and determine if they're taking what you call an appropriate amount. So if they gave you that information, what exactly would you be looking for?
When we talk about the MAC, which, I would say even some of the criminal defense attorneys believe that's based on flawed data. But even if we go with that number, it would be great if they would provide us those numbers to see if they are really meeting that. And if those are cases that are actually currently in the system, as opposed to individuals that are in warrant status, what are the actual numbers? All I want is accountability and transparency to make sure that they're actually taking the cases that they should be taking. Even the Secretary of State is out there asking for a performance audit on these groups, because this state is ready for change and is ready to see the system step up and do its part.
Are there any long-term solutions that you think are missing from, say, the state's plan?
Well, I can tell you that the MAC is not a current good solution, and OPDC and the recommendations, they only look to make this situation worse. I think first and foremost, we need that accountability and transparency so that we can actually start to dig into what's being done. The solutions for Multnomah County are going to be much different than our smaller jurisdictions. But the fact remains, there are more defense attorneys right now than there were in 2019 before this crisis occurred. And there's far less criminal cases. So how is that? We should be asking those tough questions, and we should be asking, why is it that we've put in hundreds of millions of additional dollars and the crisis is only getting worse? This is a management issue, and we really need to dig in on it.
All right, Mr. Vasquez, thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Okay, now it's your turn to weigh in. What's your take on the public defender issue here in Oregon? Did anything tonight change your mind? Let us know. Email the story at kgw.com or call and leave us a voicemail, 503-226-5090. And if tonight's deep dive on the show isn't enough for you, our web team has got you covered. Head to kgw.com to find this story right now, and it includes way more than we could fit here on the air. And if you missed part of our segment tonight, you can watch it again on the KGW YouTube channel or on our streaming app, KGW+. The story also re-airs on the app at 8:30 and 10:30 every weeknight.